In the year 1823, in a small Appalachian town, something happened that people would whisper about for generations, a single night that changed how neighbors looked at one another and how trust itself was measured. The night was unusually still, the kind of silence that pressed against your ears, and the moon hung low, pale, casting long shadows across the wooden homes and frost-dusted fields surrounding the village. Strangers had never been welcome, but on that evening, one figure arrived with a wagon, a soft-spoken man whose eyes glinted oddly in the firelight, and the villagers felt an unease that settled deep in their bones. By morning, the town had changed, invisible cracks running through familiar doors, and whispers carried the fear of betrayal, suspicion clinging like a thick fog over every home, every path, every heart in the valley. The town sat cradled between forested ridges, smoke curling lazily from stone chimneys, the scent of pine and damp earth mingling with wood smoke, and the river murmured quietly as if it held secrets of its own. Autumn had begun to settle, leaves glowing amber and gold, crunching underfoot as children chased each other along narrow dirt streets, while farmers carried the last of the harvest toward wooden barns, muscles straining, faces lined with sun and labor. Among them was Elias Harper, a blacksmith of steady hands and a quiet gaze, his coat worn and patched, eyes reflecting both caution and a hunger for stories beyond the mountains he'd never left. Elias spoke little, yet listened more, noticing the nervous glances of neighbors when a wagon appeared at the town edge, and a shadow of doubt crept into even the most familiar friendships. The blacksmith's workshop smelled of iron and coal, sparks leaping as hammers struck, and Elias often paused to watch the evening mist drift between the trees, a restless longing pressing at his chest. Martha Wells, the innkeeper's daughter, was known for her keen eyes and soft voice, her apron dusted with flour, and a smile that could calm even the most anxious visitor, though her curiosity often led her into small mischiefs. She noticed the stranger too, a man whose coat seemed too fine for travel, his boots polished, and yet his presence felt wrong, a subtle tension in the air whenever he passed the inn's threshold. At the town's edge, the old Miller farm stood empty, creaking with each gust of wind, a place where children dared not linger, and where whispers claimed something inhuman once wandered, though few adults believed the tales anymore. Even the church bells, which usually tolled faithfully for evening vespers, sounded hollow that week, echoing across the hills with a note that seemed to ask questions, and for some, the questions were too heavy to answer. Elias and Martha crossed paths often near the river, discussing nothing of importance, yet their quiet exchanges hinted at a shared unease, a mutual understanding that the night ahead could unravel the fragile trust that bound their town. That evening, the stranger offered to help with chores, his hands swift and precise, yet a chill ran down Elias's spine, the way the man's eyes lingered too long on locked doors and shuttered windows. At the inn, Martha noticed coins exchanging hands silently, the stranger speaking softly with men whose faces flushed with secrecy, and she wondered if honesty had been replaced by fear under his watchful gaze. "Where do you come from?" she asked, curiosity tinged with warning, but the stranger only smiled, his lips curling in a way that suggested knowledge of secrets no one should possess. Elias overheard neighbors whispering late at night, doubts spreading like wildfire, each word sharper than the last, and the town that once shared bread now measured who deserved it by suspicion alone. The blacksmith could feel it in the air, tension coiling in the streets, children peering from behind curtains, dogs growling at shadows that should not move, and the wind carrying voices that might not belong to anyone alive. A missing lantern sparked accusation, the stranger's laughter soft and distant, and men who had once nodded at one another now crossed streets to avoid meeting eyes, as if guilt were contagious. Martha warned Elias, "We must not let fear rule us." Yet she too felt the pull, the temptation to follow the whispers and secure her family, even if it meant betraying trust she had once held sacred. At dusk, the stranger approached the blacksmith's workshop, offering advice on tempering iron, his gaze lingering on Elias's hammer, and the blacksmith's hands trembled with indecision. Accept the help, or turn him away and risk appearing rude. Children who had played near the river vanished after sunset, leaving boots and scattered toys, and the townsfolk muttered of shadows moving in the woods, blaming the stranger, though no one could prove his involvement. A council gathered in the town hall, voices rising and falling like the wind through the pines, debating whether to confront the man or wait, a moral question sharpened by fear, each villager weighing personal safety against communal trust. Elias wrestled with conscience and caution, hammer poised, listening to the night, wondering if suspicion alone could summon misfortune, or if inaction might be the greater sin in that darkened town. The stranger offered a story by the fire, tales of distant lands and fortunes lost, yet each listener felt unease threading between the words, and the flickering flames seemed to cast images too vivid to ignore. Martha kept watch from the inn's window, heart pounding, noting how the stranger moved among the barns, his figure blending with the shadows, and she questioned whether his intent was benevolent or something far darker hidden beneath civility. A sudden scream cut through the valley, dogs barking, men racing into the night, only to find nothing but rustling leaves, and yet suspicion deepened, each heartbeat a drum of tension echoing through the wooden streets. Elias found a scrap of paper near his door, marked with unfamiliar handwriting, the words vague but threatening, and he realized that fear could be sown as easily as seed, and just as difficult to uproot. Martha confronted the stranger in the moonlight, her voice steady despite trembling hands. "Why are you here?" And the stranger's reply was a simple shrug, "Perhaps to remind you of what you have always feared and never tested." The town's watchmen debated patrols, torches swinging in the evening mist, yet even their efforts did not ease unease, as if the night itself had shifted, bending reality to echo the anxieties of those who walked its paths. Elias and Martha shared a fleeting glance near the river, understanding that trust had been stretched thin, that decisions made in fear could ripple beyond reason, and that the stranger's presence was more than mere coincidence. By morning, the town was quiet, but not at peace. Whispers carried from door to door, and every glance between neighbors felt like a question, a measure of loyalty or deceit. Elias worked at the forge, hammer striking iron, each echo sounding louder than usual, as though the metal itself carried the weight of the town's suspicion. Martha tried to serve breakfast, yet patrons spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting toward the inn's door, imagining threats behind every step, imagining the stranger's shadow lurking in corners. The stranger wandered into the market, offering small favors, but each act, meant to ease tension, only fueled suspicion, villagers questioning why anyone should give freely without expecting something in return. A farmer's cart broke near the town square, and while the stranger helped, fingers pointed and voices rose, the deed meant for kindness twisted into evidence of ill intent. Elias caught a glimpse of him near the Miller farm, tools in hand, yet the field showed no signs of work, leaving the blacksmith with unease and a gnawing doubt in his own judgment. Children whispered tales of the man at night, their stories growing darker with each telling, shadows in hallways turning into threats, and the adults could not dismiss the fear, no matter how rational they tried to be. Martha discovered a missing knife in the kitchen, and though she suspected no one, the town murmured of theft, eyes turning naturally toward the stranger, and the inn felt colder than it had ever been. Elias confronted him quietly in the forge, voice low, "Why stay among us if all you do is stir doubt?" And the stranger's reply, calm and soft, "Perhaps you are ready to see the truth in yourselves, not in me." The river ran faster after a sudden storm, flooding low paths and washing away familiar footprints. Yet the villagers blamed the stranger, claiming ill omens followed him like a shadow that could not be chased away. Late at night, a barn burned, smoke curling into the stars, and though no one saw the flames spark, suspicion thickened, neighbors eyeing one another, wondering who had failed to notice or who had caused it willingly. Martha urged calm, but her own hands trembled as she carried water, her gaze lingering on the stranger, wondering if fear had become a mirror, showing worst intentions where none existed. Elias noticed his own reflection in a puddle, distorted by rain, and wondered if suspicion had changed him, if the hammer he raised could strike at shadows as easily as at iron. Voices rose in the town square, demands for answers, for someone to name the source of misfortune, and the stranger listened, quiet, unblinking, as the town unraveled beneath its own fear. A sudden howl echoed from the forest, or perhaps it was the wind, yet it carried meaning for the villagers, a signal of danger, and the stranger's calm presence only made the night feel heavier, a weight pressing against hearts already full. Elias and Martha stayed close, sharing quiet glances, realizing that the real threat was not one man, but the ease with which trust could be replaced by doubt, and how swiftly a town could turn on itself. Footsteps creaked across empty streets, shadows lengthened unnaturally, and every door bolted and shutter closed seemed to echo the same question: who can be trusted when fear guides the hand more than reason? The stranger vanished for a night, only to return at dawn, his presence both comforting and unnerving, a paradox that reminded everyone that appearances could deceive, and caution could be both wise and corrosive. That night, the wind howled through the valley, rattling shutters and carrying the scent of smoke, as villagers gathered, torches in hand, ready to confront the stranger, or perhaps each other. Elias gripped his hammer tightly, heart thundering, wondering if suspicion had made him a participant in something darker than any shadow could hold. Martha stood by the inn, eyes wide, as neighbors argued violently over unseen misdeeds, voices raised, accusations sharper than blades, and the air thick with fear and anticipation. A scream pierced the night from the Miller farm, a child's cry, and the town froze, torches trembling in hands, as if the darkness itself had become alive, feeding on uncertainty. The stranger appeared in the square, calm, unflinching, and silence fell as eyes turned toward him, every gaze accusing, every whisper finally spoken aloud in anger and desperation. "Who brings misfortune here?" shouted a farmer, voice cracking, and the stranger's response was a quiet laugh. "Misfortune is already among you, carried not by me, but by doubt, by mistrust, by fear that grows faster than truth." Elias stepped forward, hammer raised, but the weight of conscience stayed his hand, realizing that the stranger was not the threat. The real danger had been in hearts that chose suspicion over reason. Martha's voice rang out, steady and firm. "We have hunted shadows while the real harm was the way we turned on one another," and the villagers paused, torchlight flickering over faces filled with shame and fear. The storm broke, rain washing streets and paths, and for a moment, the valley seemed to breathe, a pause in the chaos, leaving the town to confront what had truly been lost: innocence and the simple trust once freely given. Some accused the stranger, others questioned themselves, yet slowly, realization spread that fear had been a stronger hand than any man, and that suspicion could topple a town as easily as fire consumes wood. A child emerged from the Miller farm, safe, eyes wide with wonder, and the townsfolk exhaled collectively, relief mingled with lingering guilt, a lesson learned too late for comfort, yet etched deeply into their memory. Elias lowered his hammer, hands trembling, understanding that moral failure often arrives quietly, through hesitation, whispers, and choices made in shadow, rather than overt malice. The stranger smiled once, gently, then vanished as silently as he arrived, leaving the town with nothing tangible but a memory, a night of fear, and the echo of what mistrust can do. Morning came slowly, mist curling above the fields, and the town seemed smaller somehow, quieter, the echoes of fear still hanging in corners and empty streets. Elias walked along the riverbank, watching ripples catch the weak sunlight, thinking of how easily trust had frayed, and how the presence of one stranger had revealed the hidden fractures within familiar hearts. Martha attended her in, her movements gentle, yet she felt the weight of unease, knowing that while the night had passed, the lesson remained, and caution would now be measured in whispers and glances. Neighbors greeted one another carefully, nods polite but brief, smiles forced, as if the town itself had been altered. The invisible thread of community stretched thin, fragile as frost on the morning grass. Children played more cautiously now, glances over shoulders, learning early that strangers bring stories, but also questions, and that not every arrival should be met with open hands or open hearts. Elias closed his workshop for the day, sparks fading into evening shadows, and he realized that the stranger's true gift had not been fear, but revelation, a mirror held up to every villager's heart. Martha set a lantern by the door, watching the horizon glow with amber light, understanding that vigilance was now part of life, not born of paranoia, but of hard-earned wisdom, shaped by a single night's events. The river flowed steadily, indifferent to the lessons learned, yet it seemed to carry the town's whispers downstream, reminders that some mistakes leave traces, not loud and visible, but soft, persistent, and haunting. And in that valley, people learned that some mistakes don't echo loudly, they whisper for generations.